we can start in many ways with an open field. And this image of a field is something that comes to my mind when I think about cinema in the age of Netflix. Actually, there are two fields that come to mind. One is a field where everything is the same and there's only one kind of crop being grown, and another which has a variety of crops. In agricultural terms, these two fields are called the monoculture and the polyculture. These are just two of the factors that mark the first effect that I would say Netflix has had on cinema, which I would call streamatization. This simply means that online streaming has become a normalized, legitimized form of cinematic experience. But it wasn't always like this. 10 years ago, just 10 years ago, most people still watch movies in cinema, on cable television, DVD, Blu-ray. So how did we get to the point where cinema got streamatized? Unlike cable television, Netflix could collect a much richer and deeper set of viewer data to understand what kinds of films and series worked well with its audiences. This data proved incredibly useful for the last part of Netflix's successful strategy, which is to invest heavily in its own productions to maximize its profits and not lose money in licensing fees to other studios. Because it had the data of what might appeal to viewers, it could focus on developing productions that appealed to its viewers' tastes. Could it be that Netflix and streaming films and series have reached their cultural peak during the pandemic? And in the post-COVID world, we are ready to go back to cinemas and non-streaming entertainment? Some of us would really hope so. Or could it be that the market domination of Netflix is also being challenged and eroded by a new landscape of streaming companies who have started later than Netflix but are quickly catching up? While Netflix in France might be seen as a threat to a well-established and supported cinema industry, for less established or developed film markets, such as in parts of Asia or Africa or the Middle East or Latin America, Netflix offers an attractive proposition to expose its films to a global audience. And this is really a key to a second part of Netflix's rise to prominence, the way it has built up its brand as a truly global platform for cinema, using the internet to connect local film industries to a global audience like nothing that has come before it. Netflix is able to leverage its global network of productions to develop a wider range of stories that can tap into the distinct cultural qualities of its creators and their cultural backgrounds. This would be one of the strongest arguments to make on behalf of Netflix as a cinema polyculture, a global garden of rich and diverse offerings. The last Netflix effect that I want to propose is the datafication of cinema. What do I mean by the datafication? Well, as I mentioned earlier, Netflix really led the way in collecting user data over internet and using that data to create a more engaging viewer experience. Now, I don't know how many of you, when you watch Netflix or other streaming services, are thinking that when you are watching Netflix, Netflix is also watching you. In the past, media companies would organize viewers by their age, by their gender, by their income level, but this kind of algorithmic research wants to go far deeper into your psychology. The algorithm also knows that your behaviors are connected to time and space, so it notes down not just what you want to watch, but what time of day you watch and on what device, to see if there are additional patterns that reveal, for example, what you might be in the mood to watch as you're eating breakfast, or right before you go to bed, or on the train to work or to school, on your phone. But there are critics who say that the algorithm actually works in a way that limits the overall viewing experience of the viewer. because it generally offers content that is closely associated with what the viewer has already watched before. So we could call this a kind of monocultural state of viewing brought about by the algorithm. It's interesting because some of my students tell me that they actually like to watch Netflix to help them to fall asleep. And I've had students tell me that they will put Netflix on not necessarily to watch Netflix, but just to have something in the background the way that my generation would have music in the background when we're doing something else. So it's as if Netflix has taken on the role of a personal assistant or a companion, helping them wake up, helping them on the way to work, keeping them company during meals. One has to wonder if this is really watching content or spending time with content. As if Netflix was another person in your room. And as far as the Netflix metrics are involved, as far as what determines what is successful and what is worth investing in, it really doesn't matter. For them, spending time is actually more important than watching. So could this actually be a new definition and role for cinema, media that you don't necessarily watch, but that coexists with you? And so when I ask myself, in this age of overabundant, ubiquitous media content, what in the end really is good cinema? And I find that the answer is really quite simple. Good cinema is something that you remember